And welcome back to the Golf Intervention Podcast. It is a Tuesday after a Monday, after a Sunday where Rory McIlroy won the Masters for the second time. Man, I'm such a Rory fan, so that was cool to watch. Made me sweat it out a little bit there at times, but it was awesome. And one of the two of us was actually at the Masters, and I'll say it was not me, so I guess you can figure out who went to Augusta. So did you have a good time down there, I assume?
Yeah, it's so cool being there. We were not there on Sunday.
So what
we were
days?
there on Monday.
Okay.
And it's magical. It's a place where literally everyone is in like the best mood of their lives, right? It's like not a blade of grass out of place. The whole entire staff, even from the bathroom attendants, are just funny, nice. You go into the snack stands, people are there greeting you. And they're never over the top. That's the cool thing. It's like they're never to the point to where it's too much. We put our chairs down to the left of 16 as soon as we got there and just walked the course. I was with my buddy Seth Mers, and he brought his wife, Holly, and she's never been before. So it was really cool to show her and see her and allow her to kind of see that. I will be bringing my wife there one day. Just wasn't able to work out this time. But we walked the whole entire golf course. Never, ever gets old. And Augusta is one place where you never have to see a single shot and you still have an amazing time the entire day. And then towards the end, we went back to 16, sat in our chairs. I ate an embarrassing number of sandwiches. And we saw them skip it over the water. So nice. It's just such a fun day and it never gets old going, that's for sure.
Have you been there during the actual tournament rounds? Yep. Yeah. What's the vibe like those days versus the practice round days?
It's very different, I think. It's a lot more trying to figure out what's going on in the tournament, which they do such a great job at Augusta of making sure that there's almost always a scoreboard that is visible. So you do get those live updates of what's going on in the tournament. Obviously, you don't have your phone, so it's hard to really know what's going on.
Right.
But between a couple of my favorite spots to kind of sit and watch people come through, I love camping out at 2 green and watching the second shots in on 2 and then watching the tee shots on 3. That's such a great spot. I love being there in Amen Corner, obviously. So just being there to the right of 11 and just watching their approach shots in on 11 and then watch their tee shots on 12 is pretty magical.
Yeah, that would be the spot. Yeah. That would be the spot.
But you're not really there to as much keep track of the tournament. I think I've found like if you go there with the intention of, okay, I'm going to follow the tournament today, you're probably going to be a little bit, I'm never going to say disappointed, but like you're not really there to keep track of the tournament unless you are following the final groups. Like if you're on the last day and you're just walking along with one of the final groups, then you can kind of keep track of what's going on. But for the most part, you're watching your favorite players, you're camping out, you're watching, people play through, and there's no wrong way to do Augusta for sure.
So fun. One day I'll go.
I told you I'm gonna drag you down there.
We shall see.
Next year.
I definitely want to go, as you know. So I almost wanted to do an entire episode on this year's Masters and discuss some of the bigger takeaways that I think golfers and our listeners could really learn from it. And there's a couple different moments in the Masters this year that I thought was really interesting. One of which was Victor Hovland's interview after the tournament. Did you hear Victor Hovland's interview after the tournament? So I said a few episodes ago that I thought understanding the ball flight laws as pertain to how the club and the ball interact and what that does to the to the ball flight was akin to learning music theory if you're going to learn to play an instrument. And I don't remember what episode I said that on, but the point being, you can play golf without knowing that stuff for sure. Most of the people listening to this, right? I'd say 99% of golfers that play golf don't have a full understanding of the ball flight laws. I get it. But the better your understanding of it is, just like maybe the better understanding you have of music theory could help you be a more accomplished, artist or, instrumentalist, we'll call it, right? So Victor Hovland, kind of talked about it after the round. I wish I had the quote right in front of me, but he basically said like, yeah, the ball was kind of going all over the place, but because I understand the ball flight laws, I know how to try to make that work. And I know what I need to do to get better, right? Essentially. But he was basically saying he could play with what he had because he understood how it all worked, right? And he was describing path and face stuff. So it was cool. I mean, if you find it, I don't remember where it was. It was on Instagram somewhere. I saw it. I thought that was a great conversation. We could have had a whole episode on that. I thought all the conversation around Rory McIlroy not hitting the ball particularly well with the driver early, right? And he's leading by a massive amount, not really driving it straight because he's driving it so far and getting lucky at times. I didn't watch the first few rounds, but I see he got lucky sometimes. And obviously he's awesome. But then he was pulling his iron shots. Like I did see that late on Saturday. I was watching the end of that. And he was pulling some iron shots. And then he went to the range and he worked it out. Rory worked it out at the range. But did you hear what he said?
What did he say?
I mean, it was like, this is beautiful, right? This is exactly what I tell people every day. He's like, yeah, I was hooking it because I was getting my path too much to the right, which is basically closing my face to path. Again, he's talking ball flight law stuff. So I tried to hit some cuts. Like I went to the range and hit a bunch of cuts, right?
Chef's kiss.
Basically getting my path to the left, turning hard. He called it turning harder.
Different face to path.
He's saying I was getting lazy with my lower body. Yeah, it's just face to path stuff, right? So what was he doing? He's trying to do the opposite of what the issue was. And if you can work that out, you call that finding the guardrails, basically. Mm-hmm. It's like, then I can balance it out in the middle somewhere. And it wasn't perfect on Sunday by any means, but I feel like he had a much better control of what he was trying to do. And he talked about that. He talked about that multiple times after the round was over. So anytime the Masters comes around, it's like everybody is watching. There's such a hyper focus on player interactions and the interviews and what they're doing. There's so much commentary. I mean, there was commentary that kind of circled through our world from, again, one of the Golf Channel guys who doesn't always quite maybe understand what he's talking about when it comes to the ball flight stuff. Completely messed it up. So this is why I wanted to kind of go into that, and we're not going to go into that today. Maybe we'll do it another time. But this is why it's so confusing. He was trying to describe, quote unquote, steep and shallow. We discussed again in this series where I don't even say those words with my students anymore, that you could completely substitute other better words than steep and shallow, and people can get a better understanding for what's going on there. So yeah, he was confused on steep and shallow. He basically said that Scotty Scheffler came over the top, which he doesn't at all. Like, did you see this commentary?
It's crazy.
Anyway, you wonder why people are confused, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this stuff is so confusing for people. And that's why we have this show. We're trying to sort it out for you. And we go through things like the ball flight laws because we want you to understand it. It's a little bit nerdy at times, but if you can speak that language, I feel like you're understanding of what's going on. Just like Victor Hovland said, if I understand it, I know how to play with it and I know how to keep working on it, right? And if I don't really understand it, it's much, much more difficult. So anyway, I thought that was some interesting takes from the Masters. And yeah, can't wait for the next one for sure.
Yep.
Greatest event of the year, greatest sporting event of the year. So on this episode, we promised we would do a sort of questions. So we would collect some questions from folks about our latest series on golf improvement theory. So we went through those 3 episodes, and we thank you if you checked them out and sent us a question. We definitely have collected some. We have some that are relevant and some that we feel like might be more relevant for other series. So we're kind of saving them. But please keep reaching out with the questions. We love some questions. So Rob Fails, how has your student interaction been with people listening to that last series of episodes? And do you have any questions from your students about anything that we discussed there?
So I think overall, just continuing to beat the drama of separating strategy, skill, and swing. I think most everyone has very, very positive feedback, especially have a clear understanding of the differences in those 3 has been the biggest thing. And then a question that I got was about wind. And when are we going to do like any sort of deep dive into wind? And when is wind relevant for you, like for a particular golfer? Like, when is wind a thing? And then for different levels of golfer, does the influence of wind change? So the answer is to both questions. It's going to be yes, the influence of wind is going to fluctuate for a given individual. And then the influence of it on our scoring and predicting it and accounting for it accurately and the importance of that does get greater as you get up the learning curve, as you move from level 1 all the way through to level 4. With all of our series we're planning to do, so we're going to do a driver series, basically, you could say just driving in general series, an approach play series, a short game series, and a putting series. Wind is going to be a factor in the strategy episode within all 4 of those different series. So we will do deep dives into wind for each of these. But as a general rule, what we typically see is if you are flying your driver less than 150 yards-ish, you can pretty much ignore wind for your long game for the most part. It's just not going to move the needle, so to speak, on what is important for you. Wind for these golfers who are limited speed, wind and predicting wind is going to actually be more relevant for short game and putting. And even then, it's lower on the priority list of things that are going to be relevant for them, right? So you can picture this level 1 golfer who's working a lot on arc location, working a lot on improving their club head speed. It's very rare that I'm going to put their attention very heavily on wind. Once you're able to fly your driver upwards of 190 to 200 yards, then it's going to have much more of an influence. And then we talk about just getting the direction of wind correct. Maybe not as much tuning the amount of wind, but can you be aware of the direction of wind throughout the entire game for those golfers, for sure. And then once you get into end of level 2, early level 3, where you're flying your driver upwards of 240, 250, into 260, then it's not enough. If you picture this end of level 2, level 3, and then all the way through level 4 golfer, it's not enough just to get the direction of wind correct. You need to understand how much, and then how much you're adjusting your intended direction and intended distance for that wind. So we're going to go a deep dive into some wind, especially with those strategy episodes as we work through each series, driving, approach, short game, putting. But that's kind of like a nice preview or overview of how we think about wind for those different levels.
And again, you saw at the Masters how much they pay attention to
how much
wind.
It changes.
I mean, it's like
wind doesn't follow linear rules. Like, it does not follow. It does its own thing. So as much as you can think you've got the wind nailed down, at the end of the day, you never truly know what exactly the wind at your golf ball is going to see. So that's where taking the overall data in a golf course, and what we're going to talk about maybe in a little bit, is like some apps out there are phenomenal of like just getting, okay, for today, what is my average wind and my average wind direction? And more often than not, going off of that, you can definitely look at tops of trees. I'm not a huge fan of throwing grass in general, just because the wind can swirl when you get down to kind of the much lower levels, and you're just not going to typically get as accurate representation of what the ball is actually seeing and how it's responding up at the top of the arc. And very similar to putting, what's happening in the middle third of the ball flights, probably what's the most relevant. The first third, last third, not going to be as relevant as what's going on in that middle third when the ball's up. Again, think about like end of level 2 golfer, that golf ball is peaking out at 70, 80, 90, 100, sometimes feet high. Like, understanding what's happening up there is really what's relevant. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that, and ways that we're going to talk about, and options that you have for that, for sure.
How the wind swirls through Amen Corner is always such a mystical thing. Rory talked about that because I was curious about. So here's a good targeting story, right? We talk about trying to aim your dispersion, right? So here's Rory on 12, right? And everybody's aiming, especially since the Jordan Spieth disaster, and then you had the Brooks Koepka, Francesco Molinari. Like, when Tiger won, did they 5 of the last 6 players hit it in the water on 12 or something like that? Like, it was some absurd, maybe it was 3 of the last 4. I mean, it was crazy, right? Tiger didn't. And basically everybody else did. And that won him the tournament. So you have to aim over the middle of the bunker, no matter where that flag is. And Rory hit it looked like a little punch cut 9-iron. And he basically said, no, I wasn't quite aiming there, but I knew the wind could push it, just depending on what happens. And if I caught that, if it did, where it ended up was in the range of outcomes. That's what he said. Right? Yeah. He said he said it wasn't going to be any further right than that. He didn't feel like, but he knew if he got that little baby cut right in the wind, if it picked up a little bit. And he said he basically learned from Tom Watson to stand on that tee box and wait for the wind that you won, and then just hurry up and hit.
That's cool. That's awesome.
And so he just stood there, felt it a little off his shoulder, and he said, I was going to hit this little punchy 9, and it just rode the wind enough to get over to that whole location. Because with a lead, I mean, you're not messing with that whole location. But, he said it was in the range of outcomes. So that's what we're saying. But if Rory would have aimed it at that flag with a punchy cut 9-iron, he probably would have hit it in the water. Right? So that was a range of outcome that he didn't want. So he aimed it sort of right center of the bunker and hit that shot, and it moved it, 20-30 feet probably. And then he caught a little ridge and rolled down there to the hole, which was super, super cool. So much to learn from the Masters. So much to learn. How about a question from an email?
Let's do it.
We can do that from a listener. We got this one from Liam, and Liam's a member at CCV, and he sent this a long time ago. So thank you, Liam, for your question. We sent a few, but we picked the one that we felt was the most relevant to this series. So he's saying, practice versus play. How do you find the right balance between on-course play and using the practice area? If you're a 10 handicap you feel like average 10 handicap skills across the board, who has some flexibility of your schedule, and wanted to improve their game by about 3 strokes, what training plan would you come up with for basically the course of, say, 3 months? So here we are. Now we're into the season where you can play, you can practice, the days are longer, the grass and the conditions are really good, right? So I've got 3 months trying to take 3 strokes off my game as aggressive. A goal, which is, just 30% of my handicap. No big deal.
Yeah.
But I like it. In fact, I think that if you go back to our very first few episodes, this is what we talked about, right? This was essentially, we said, why don't golfers improve? It was basically a big question that we're trying to answer. We wanted to put out there what we thought about golf improvement, and we kind of just framed it in that way. How do I come up with a plan for improvement? And I thought what really helped us was a look into scoring data for different levels of player, right? And so if I'm a 10 handicap, there's some data relevant to me. And this is where strokes gained gets a little tricky. If I use Arcos or something, you're like, oh, compare myself to a 10. Oh, I'm right on across the board. Okay, what do I work on? If I'm comparing myself to a scratch, I'm losing the same amount of strokes across the board. What do I work on, and why? What am I trying to accomplish? So the data that we tried to help provide through GameForge contextualizes that scoring difference, I think, a little bit better, right? How often am I hitting it inside 20 feet for birdie and around? How many times am I having a penalty or a disruptor shot where I have to chip out, basically? How many times am I 3-putting versus making sort of a long putt? I like that ratio a lot as you get to being a better player. And then I think just in the short game, I've had a lot of discussion in short game with better players when they're like, what is my strategy for improving my short game? And I'm like, man, it's about proximity. It's about how often can I get it to 6 feet and closer? And, and sometimes 8 feet or sometimes 12 feet, but you're trying to figure out as a player how good you are at doing that, essentially, right? And so as a 10 handicap, we don't have that sort of average 10 handicap player data in front of me, but basically I would say the 10 handicaps I know aren't probably chipping it super close to the hole all the time. So I think I'd probably start there if I was trying to lose a couple strokes, especially if I was a good driver of the ball, because we don't really know what the driving is like in this story. So we're trying to make up a little bit of an answer. But I think the answer would be for me, if everything was across the board and I had 3 months to do it, I would focus on short game. I would focus on strategy and short game.
This is a very interesting question. It's kind of nuanced because we're giving ourselves a little bit of a time constraint, right?
Correct. Which we've also said is a demotivator, and you shouldn't do that.
But let's go with it.
This is like gun to my head. I have to be a 7 handicap by the end of the summer, or I lose a $50,000 bet with my brother.
This is where it gets very interesting. So if you take a 10 handicap, right? So let's say they're averaging in the neighborhood of, let's say 14 to 17 over par, right? Is that fair?
I would say that's fair. Yeah, 14 to 16.
Right. So their average score is going to be anywhere from 86-ish to 88, 89. So that bucket of golfer is still going to be in the range where shots to green is almost, and that just like that general shots to green number via reducing disruptors and penalties is still going to be the biggest slice of the pie. You're approaching the territory where greens and reg become as much, if not more important, because you're trying to make proportionally more pars at that point. But even though, yes, it is a bigger slice of the pie, if you talk about what am I going to do the quickest, what am I going to do in a short period of time to get 2 to 3 strokes, I would argue putting. Like, because the gains that you can make in a short amount of time on the putting green are probably easier to make than incrementally improving like quarters of shots with your tee shots and your approach play. And getting maybe averaging one fewer disruptor / penalty around over time, right? So while for those golfers, if they come to see us for like more of like, hey, you're going to be my coach and we're going to work together on getting you where you want to be, I would sprinkle in some putting, but I would heavily focus on improving ball striking. If you give me a 3-month time window, then I'm trying to get their putter, and to your point, proximity and short game, as good as I can get it in a short amount of time, which is going to include a lot of strategy. Like, hey, how are we reading the green? How are we reading our chips? Working on a lot of skill when it comes to distance predictability stuff. Certainly for a 10 handicap, like arc location with short game and is going to be definitely a thing. But yeah, I would say like if I'm going to focus on one, it's going to be a solid percentage of putting, solid percentage of short game, and then working on arc location stuff and maybe some face to path stuff with tee shots and approach shots, just to try to reduce those disruptors and penalties.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
like with the 3-month time constraint. I don't know if we fully answered Liam's question because he was actually asking about practice versus play.
Well, now we can take that context that we just talked about and then just kind of build the where and how portion of that, right?
Yeah, I would contend that with an improve in strategy, especially on tee shot and approach play, just picking good. Good aim
yeah,
lines,
that'd be a big one too.
You're gonna gain probably. I would guess if you and I went out and caddied for a 10 handicap, the average 10 handicap, that they would hit a few more greens in regulation than they would if they were on their own. Just because we're going to pick the right.
And they're going to reduce disruptors off the tee a little bit too, because we're going to give them lines off the tee. Like, wait a minute, you want me to aim at that bunker? I'm like, yup, I want you to aim right at that bunker.
And you're going to hit a 4-iron there,
maybe,
because I saw your tee shot on the last hole. Especially if we had like a day of getting a little TrackMan data, and then just really understanding their club distances, right, and being like, okay, we understand where you hit this ball, so we're going to help you pick the right aim strategy. I would predict we would limit a disruptor or two and probably hit a green in regulation more or 2 or 3. And that would be huge, right? And then to your point, like short game is the fastest way to improve.
The least, question. The least resistance to,
Right, especially if your technique is very country club level, which I call like meaning like a country club short game is fine, but it's not very diverse.
Yes.
Right. So learning how to change trajectories and spins and reading the the rollout a little bit better, and those things that like really help you become a better short game player, which takes some coaching potentially, right? And then as far as like playing on the course and practicing, yeah, I mean, the rhythm of that is probably up to the person. Your practice has to be there if you're going to get better at the short game. Like you've got to work at it a little bit. But man, I just love when people play more golf. So that's where the strategy is going to improve, right? And so I'm sure you have a more scientific answer to what I just gave, but that's sort of my warm and fuzzy
totally
answer.
Agree. Like when talking about the ratio of quote unquote practice to play. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that in general, like change the stakes on the golf course as much as you can. So if you're going to make sure that every time you go on the golf course is not super high stakes, right? So if you can go on the golf course and turn it into a quote unquote practice session where it's like, all right, I'm going to become aware of the things that are relevant for me in my game and I'm going to work on them, then and do it in almost a block practice, like quote unquote block practice on the golf course type of style, where again, it's not always applicable because, you know, there's time constraints around like who you're playing behind, you know, that kind of stuff. But if you can go out and have the ability to play a shot and then assess, all right, was it swing, skill, strategy, and then drop another golf ball down, make the intended adjustment and do that throughout the course of a round and just start to not only develop skill, because then you're going to have to be adjusting skill based off of the last shot, as well as the differences in environment, like different lies, slopes, winds, and whatnot. But you're also going to be learning how well do you maintain the same freedom and the same rhythm when it comes to your golf swing in those different environments. And then also learning from a strategy standpoint what you're trying to do. So golf like is an amazing way, and practicing on the golf course is an amazing way to blend working on all three at the same time. If your attention is on the what we believe is like the right thing. So starting with, what did I swing it essentially the same being the first question. And then second question would be, right, was it my strategy, is AKA my plan, or the skill just didn't line up for me on that one, right? And then starting to become aware of patterns, adjusting to patterns on the golf course. Like you do that in practice. Like you're not going to be on the golf course in the course of play as able to make those adjustments if you haven't been already used to doing it on the golf course in lower stakes environments. So that's kind of what I would say is practice is play for the most part. It's just what's the challenge point that you need right now, or what you're desiring for, because on the golf course, you're going to have more time in between shots. You're going to have more variability. You're going to have higher level of consequence. So those are all going to change the challenge point, right? It's just going to be more difficult to access that same rhythm and freedom. It's going to be a little more difficult to access those skills. The strategy might feel a little fuzzier when it's on the golf course and when it matters, but you don't get to where you want from going from the range, where it's like no stakes, no variability, no spacing, all the way to maximum, right? One ball, keeping your score with a scorecard in your pocket with other people playing with you. There's a bridge there that you want to be able to move through.
And I think it's fair to say you can get better at golf just by playing more.
100%.
Like you don't 100%. Have to.
I would totally agree.
You don't have to hit tons of balls, and granted, that's great to do that. Like I'm not saying you don't need to practice, because practice is, you totally do. But you have a Scottish Highlands cow picture hanging over your right shoulder.
I was wondering when that would show up.
The listener cannot see, but I can see. And his name, you said, is Old Tom Morris. And that just reminds me, I say this all the time to people. How did Old Tom Morris get good at golf? It wasn't like he was out on the driving range pounding balls. I mean, there's still many golf courses in Europe and England that don't have driving ranges at all, right? They don't have them to warm up. They don't have a practice facility, right? So what do? They do exactly what you just described, right? They do some practice on the course. They play a lot. They move it around. They figure it out. They do whatever. But it's not like you have to go Like your only way to get better is to stand on a
Correct.
range and hit 400 7-irons in a row. I mean, that
Totally.
just isn't
And it's
true,
like
right?
whether or not you get better through just playing golf, I think a lot depends on your framework, your psychological framework and the feedback that you're being given. What's your mindset around what's going on, right? Are you viewing the outcomes as binary, good or bad, and then making everything personal, pervasive, prolonged, right, that we've talked about? Or are you looking at it as information that is objective, right? Not just judging it. And then are you aware of them as single isolated occurrences, right? So they're temporary, they're external, right? They're non-personal, right? And then if you're viewing them through that lens, you can be aware of those patterns. And then if your framework of what is happening, if the awareness and the feedback is there and you're starting to be open to that error feedback and seeing the patterns, then you can make adjustments. And that's where the quality of your mindset, again, going back to all the way to Dr. Pryor stuff, is so huge. The people that I see who bring a growth mindset to the golf course when they practice and play, they do get better just by playing. The folks who bring more of a fixed mindset to practice and play when they play the golf course, they might get better, but the likelihood is it's going to be a bit more difficult for them.
Yeah, I've seen through the years some folks that are really hard on themselves. I think this is exactly what you're saying. It's like if you go out there and you're judging your self-worth by it, a lot of people don't realize
you're living
they're
and
doing this,
dying
right?
by each shot.
They're not they're emotional in the moment, right? They're hitting a shot and they're telling themselves something internally like you're a terrible golfer,
only
or
terrible golfers
your friends aren't going to want to play with you because you're so bad right now, or all these things that are just not helpful. So what all Robbie's trying to say is hit a shot and try to notice what happened to it more objectively without emotionally reacting to it. And it's hard to do, but actually when you try to do it, you can do it. Everybody can do it. And that helps, fuel that growth mindset where it's like, if I have acceptance that golf is a hard sport and I'm going to mess up sometimes, and I'm just trying to notice what happens when it goes well and when it doesn't go well, I'm going to get way better than trying to judge myself
100%.
on my performance, and then maybe there's some deep rooted stuff there, but at the end of the day, like you're playing for fun in theory, and you just do the best that you can, and that's all you can do. So I have another question from a listener. This is from a listener who we appreciate a lot because he listens pretty much the first day they come out, and then he always wants to give me some feedback about it or ask me questions, which I really like. So this one's from Lee Maloney. And he says this: how do you take the skills learned in differential training to the course? And I will say that Lee is working on differential training. I see him doing it, right?
It's awesome.
And he talks about it and he likes it. So differential training and taking it to the course, this is where we talked about skill, right? This is a skill thing. So Rob, what do you think about Lee's question?
Right.
There?
So understand what differential training is. First off, in like the definition of it, it's reference point learning via intentional error feedback, right? So very similar to Goldilocks, right? You're giving yourself the boundaries of the skill. You're giving your brain that information about where the margins of error actually are. So then your brain has awareness, and awareness being the key of where the middle ground could be. Right. So we call this, like, a lot of my players will say, like, it's essentially a calibration process. So it's going to teach your brain over a long period of time where the club is in space. Because I don't know who ever said that perception is reality. It's not. Usually it's not. Right. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it matches up. But usually it's a little bit off. Right. So differential training, and it's meant and designed to be done on the range. Again, very low stakes. You can do it on the golf course. I'm not saying you can't do it on the golf course. You can absolutely do differential training on the golf course, especially, like I said, if you're in that practice round environment, 100% you can do it on the golf course. But it's designed to be a long-term strategy for answering the question, why is there this perception and reality gap in terms of where I think the club is in space when it comes to literally where the club head is at impact, which is going to create differences in the impact spot on the face to path at impact, as well as the club head speed at impact. All right. So differential training is not designed to create swing thoughts. It's not designed to be added stuff that you're considering or thinking about when you go play. It is an exercise. It is like working out. It's like brushing your teeth. It's like something that just you do anytime really you can in a practice environment, and then you forget about it. You literally forget. You put it out of sight, out of mind, especially when it comes to arc location and face to path for the most part, depending on the shot. Sometimes you're in the trees, you got to work it around something. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more intentional with this stuff. When it comes to speed, if you were to put your attention when you play on one of those skills, probably speed would be my choice. Something speed related would be my choice as far as like where you're placing your focus. If you're ever going to focus on skill, again, you don't have to. You literally can just forget skill altogether when you go play, assuming that you're swinging freely and your strategy is good. You might then see a pattern. Like when you go out and play, you might be a little bit heel biased. Like first shot off the heel, cool. Let's go find it and see what happens next. Swinging freely, good strategy, boom, heel, cool. That's 2. All right, not going to do anything yet. That's only 2. You never know. There's may have been the only 2 the entire day you hit off the heel. Let's see what happens again. Then third one in the row. Okay, cool. All right, so now I could make an adjustment if I want. I don't have to. Boom, 4th in a row in the heel. Okay, all right, now we're going to be aware of this pattern and then call upon a little bit of a feel of the opposite. Essentially, hey, I wonder what would happen if then I got the bottom of the swing a little closer to me, right? Then what I think is correct. And that's the key there, is that you are open and willing to experience the opposite end of the spectrum because you are appreciating the fact that there's a perception and reality gap, right? And you're using that to your advantage. And then at some point, you're going to end up creating your intended skill the more you do it and the more you try. But in the meantime, you're going to hit probably a lot of very like centered-ish shots, right? When you try to create and learning how to create the right amount of that adjustment, again, because it's a very subconscious, it's a feel, it's a sensory adjustment. It's not a swing thought. It's not, oh, let me do this with my left hip or let me do this with my right. No, it has nothing to do with a macro swing thing. It's a very, very subtle micro feel as the club is approaching the golf ball that is making the difference in your outcomes that you're experiencing on a golf course. All right. Assuming that the swing wasn't too different from a rhythm and freedom standpoint, it was a skill or it was a strategy thing, right? And so understanding that and saying, okay, well, I'm only going to call upon this feel that I develop in differential training if I notice a pattern on the golf course. That's number 1. And if the pattern is outside my dispersion. Number 2, if you're hitting it just a little out the heel, but this ball is absolutely peppering inside your dispersion, great. Throw yourself a party. Love it. Go hit your tiny little heel cut all day long and take your friend's money, right? You do not have to be in the exact center of the face all day long. If it's not roaming a ton, if it's pretty tight dispersion and it's functional in your dispersion, don't touch it. Accept it. Say, this is just where I'm at today. Play it and then have fun. But you're only making a little feel adjustment to skill if the following are true. A, the rhythm and freedom is the same. B, there's a pattern, like a cluster, basically, 3 to 4-ish in close proximity. C, right? Or did I say 1, 2, 3, ABC? Whatever, doesn't matter. Lastly, if it's outside your dispersion, right? Those are the conditions that need to be met before you make any sort of intentional little skill feel tweak to what's going on.
Yeah, so I think that's the answer is what you just said there, obviously. But it's like when you train those things, you're not going to be surprised by them.
Right.
That's what I think is the benefit for a lot of golfers. Like for me, for a lot of golfers, is when things show up.
Right.
I'm not going to be surprised by it. I'm going to be able to recognize what's going on. A lot of people, you've said this on the show, and I don't disagree with you. I was doing a little math. I think probably last year, I probably watched over 150,000 shots on TrackMan. Okay. And every shot, pretty much every shot, I have these data points up here. One is the impact location on the face, right? Which TrackMan uses an algorithm to create a little dot on the face. It's not always perfect, but it's usually pretty darn close. And then you've got, club speed, carry distance, total distance,
Face
path, attack angle, face to path, dynamic loft I have up there sometimes, low point distance. Like those are my kind of general ones. And I'll pull other ones in when I need to, especially in club fitting. So those are the main ball flight laws, essentially, right? That's it. And I watched, I'm going to guess last year, 150,000 shots on TrackMan, just last year. So in the 12 years that I've been teaching with TrackMan, clearly over 1 million shots I've seen on there, right? With a little dot popping up on most of them, right? That algorithm wasn't always on there. But it is now. It's been there for years. So point being, a lot of times people hit a shot and they'll say, oh, I hit that on the toe. And they hit it way on the heel, right? Or vice versa.
Yep.
Or I hit it fat and I'm like, hit it fat, right? So the point is that's a person that needs to do some skill differential training to be able to understand and just recognize where the ball's sitting on the face or where the arc is locating itself, like up or down, in or out, right? Arc height and arc depth, so to speak. And I would say the open and closed face thing is pretty reasonable because people are reacting to the ball flight. But if you had them close their eyes and hit, I'm not sure they'd always figure that one out either. Right? So if you're someone that doesn't have those feels, you should be training those feels because then you are able to react to them in a way that seems right and plausible, right? Where it's like, I know what's going on here, right? And to your point, it's not intended to be this big conscious adjustment. That's not the point. Sometimes it's a little bit of a conscious adjustment, but most of the time when you train this, you just get better. I don't know how else to say 100%. It. Like you just get better. And that's the point. That's just the point, right? You just get better at making contact because your brain is figuring out what it takes to make good contact because you're showing it the parameters of that.
And you always, you have this almost like armor, right? Of like, there's nothing that can happen on a golf course that if it becomes a pattern, you don't have the ability to adjust, right?
Correct. So that would be my answer. Lee Maloney, I hope that was a good answer for you. And thank you for the question. Really do appreciate it. I found the Victor Hovland interview. You want to listen to that real quick? Yep. Let's play it. Let me turn it up here. Hopefully we don't get like a...
I realized on the last episode, I was talking about tempo and I was snapping and it like completely... It didn't get my snapping. I just sounded like I was just awkward pause. So yeah, let's hope it pinks it up.
Let's hope this comes through. You ready?
And it's just tough to answer because first of all, that's why I like TrackMan and understanding the ball flight laws are very good to have because you can start a ball more left than you would like, but if it's curving back, who cares? That just means you're granted if you're hitting it in the center, your club path is just maybe creeping a bit more left, but if your face is in the right spot, you're just hitting a bigger curve, and then you can adjust that accordingly. Now, if you're starting the ball left and it's going left, instead of face issues, or you're striking it off the heel and they're not coming back, so there's a lot of minutiae involved with that. But if it's just a face to path issue, or a club path direction, then you can solve that pretty easily by, playing a bigger cut or playing a bigger draw or moving it a bit more forward or back in the stance, simple stuff like that.
Cool. How cool was that? So Victor's like, yeah, if you understand what makes the ball do the thing, then you can adjust to make it do the other thing.
Assuming that you practice changing it. And that would be my big thing. Like,
correct,
that's
which
what
Victor Hovland clearly
that's what differential
does.
Training is.
Yeah.
You literally are changing what the ball is doing.
Correct. So what he was basically referencing, which I don't think we got the first part of the question, was basically like, how do you play with that? He's like saying, well, I could play with whatever.
Right.
I can get out on the first hole. I've got to see what's happening. Like I can make adjustments that way if I understand what makes the ball do its thing, right? So It's hard for me to believe I taught half my career before TrackMan, to be quite honest, because it's such a hard thing to understand what we were even telling people back then, or how I even learned golf. I have some guys that I teach that are probably around my age that grew up playing junior golf and competitive golf, and we're trying to get better. And I always say this line, like, when you and I were learning golf, this is what we were trying to do, and ... A lot of times it was counterproductive, or it was nonsensical in a lot of ways. But that's what we were being taught, because it was just a philosophy of swing, essentially, right? So going back to game improvement theory, which is what this first series was about, is like, it's not all about the swing. And again, we could have done a whole episode on the Masters, like these teachers breaking down Rory's swing, like, oh, Rory's definitely hooking it because he's winging his scapular, whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh. He rotates the shaft too much at the bottom, which causes inconsistency in his ball flight. I'm like, bro.
Yeah.
If we could only discuss that.
And that's why we call the show the Golf Intervention. We called it an intervention for a reason. because golfers,
we just want people to know the answers. That's it.
Like, people just end up believing this stuff because they heard it on TV and this person's reputable, so to speak. Right?
But if you really look at the ball flight laws, it all comes together, right? For sure. Then you combine that with you just layer on top of it from there. And that's the language of golf, in my opinion. So do we have any other questions at this point? Do you have any other questions from your people?
I got a good question, actually. This was from friend of the show, Rudy Rudolph, one of my students, asked about what should we be paying attention to when we watch golf on TV? If we just completely ripped on golf broadcasting, right? Sorry, guys. Not all of you are bad.
No, we ripped on golf commentary.
What did I say? Did I say
I will tell you the most nauseating thing. The most nauseating thing in the world is commentary about commentary. I get it, because that's even worse. But when it's hurting the golfer because it's being misapplied. Rudy has a great question. I know what I like to watch. I like to watch the interactions with the caddies, because that's the strategy piece that really I think is helpful. So when you can actually hear the interaction, when they're making adjustments for lie, slope, and weather, right, mostly wind, when they're picking a target line at the center of their dispersion, those things are awesome to hear, right? Watching their approach to the pre-swing, just in general, after the conversation, is incredibly important, where they put their attention. So I'm going to answer this question. I'm going to answer it fully, and then I'll let you answer what you see too. Where you can literally see them seeing the shot a lot of the time, right? Their attention is it's externally focused on their target and on their ball flight that they're trying to hit. How they create a rhythm in their swing that looks so repeatable. Like when you watch Rory swing after swing after swing after swing, or Cam Young, who has an interesting rhythm, but it's very consistent.
You got it.
I mean, obviously, the consistency of the rhythm is really what's going to drive the ability to have some repeatability in the strike and in the club face delivery. Because, by the way, we're not controlling that club face delivery very much. Nope. I mean, it's not about that. I mean, the more that you try to control it, probably the worse it gets. 100%. So you have to be able to just deliver it in a way that feels predictable. And rhythm, I think, plays a huge role in that.
100%.
Right? So I would say the interaction with the caddy, so the lie, slope, and wind predictions, club selection, the target line selection, and then the pre-shot routine and the rhythm of their swings is really, I mean, they don't show green reading anymore. I think if you know, I don't watch a ton of golf, I have to be really honest, but I like to watch Sunday of the Masters. But they didn't show anybody reading. I mean, they never show Justin Rose reading a green. Did you notice that?
He uses aim point. They didn't show it.
Never showed him once reading a green. They don't show Ludwig Aber reading a green. They'll show, Rory and Scotty walking around for 20 minutes, looking at it from 12 different angles. Cam Young's caddy's looking at it from, a bunch of angles, and they're leaning down the ground. They're showing all that, but they will never show someone using aim point, which I think is really interesting. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. But yeah, so that's what I watch. And I think for the students, obviously you're trying to level up to that level of control and ability and strategy. And if you're shooting 112, you don't have it, but at least you can start to put together some thoughts on how to improve based on what you see from those guys and the gals who are great too.
I completely agree with everything you said. And the commonalities and everything that you said there, Eric, is pay attention to what they're doing, not what people believe that they're doing.
Exactly. You could not have said, wait, say that again. Please say that again. We have to say this for emphasis twice.
Pay attention to what they're doing, not what other people believe they're doing.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And remember that I would layer on top of that, and remember it's what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's like, it's influential to you, but it's not necessarily your answer either. But there's always things to learn. And I think that if we listen to the great players, you'll get clues from the greats, right? You get clues from the greats, and the people that talk about what they think they're doing, it just isn't all that helpful, right? I just think it's just not all that helpful. So that's what we're trying to circumvent with this show, so to speak. Like, just give the right stuff, the data. Give me the data. Don't give me the hogwash.
Yep.
Whatever that means. I don't even know what hogwash means.
I've heard it for a long
like
time.
It's appropriate. Yeah, I live in the South. People say hogwash.
Is it what you wash your hog with? What? Not like if you've got a pig or something.
And who would want that? Who would want it? I wouldn't want it. So anyway, it's getting late.
We're talking about hogwash.
Getting off the rails. Todd 10 hours at 90-degree heat today, and I'm like, hogwash. Anyway, Rob Fails. Anything else you'd like to add to this fine episode today?
What's our next series going to be?
To be determined.
TBD.
TBD.
If you got some
ideas,
it's going to be very likely driving, approach, short game, or putting. We might go off the rails with like a random episode here and there about whatever we want to talk about, because this is our podcast.
Whatever we want. Might have an interview, might not. Who knows? Who knows? You never know.
But before we leave, I got a huge shout out to UVA men's golf. They won their home tournament today at the Louis Chitengwa. Big win, blew out the field. Paul Chang, co-medalist. This was his second win in a row. So, Paul, love you, man. Proud of you. You are
come on, Paul Chang,
doing some amazing things. So,
what year is he now?
This last year. Yep,
Senior, fourth year. Well, at UVA would call that a fourth year. I don't want to. I have a son there. I've got to use the proper nomenclature, right? You don't call him a senior. You call him a fourth year. Come on, good for him. Number one team in the country, right?
Absolutely.
Are they still ranked number one? I mean, wow. He's got some teammates too.
Yeah.
I mean, that team is loaded, man. I mean, I'm not going to go on a UVA athletics tirade because I do have a son there. But UVA has some athletic teams, man. I mean, the swimming teams are unbelievable. Tennis teams are unbelievable. They're always good in soccer and lacrosse, and now golf's number one in the country. They won an NCAA championship in basketball not long ago. Like, man, and these kids at UVA, man, they are intense. They are that's a focused group of kids, man. Super cool. Well, I know the team appreciates your help with their players who ask for it, and
I don't do much. Yeah.
Wahoo wah. Let's go.
Yep.
Let's go. All right, Rob Fails. Thank you for another lively discussion on golf.
I love our lesson. We didn't even talk about. Well, we did. We talked about lessons from lessons indirectly.
We had some insights. I mean, there was some stuff I could have brought up that I had in the back of my mind, but
that was good. That was a mailbag.
Yeah, we'll get to those
100%.
things. Our last episode, which was really fun, one of our most downloaded episodes we've ever had. And we talked a lot about like what to pay attention to, probably what not to pay attention to. And we didn't talk much about sort of our own preferences as instructors, which golf instructors are going to have some preferences. That's just part of the deal, right? And as far as swing goes. And so I think we're going to put that out as a bonus episode as soon as we can get it out on the Substack. So you may want to check that out, where Rob and I are actually going to talk about how we teach people to swing it, or what we like to see in the swing, given our own biases. So that'll be really fun. We haven't really done that. We've tried to stay away from that on the show for good reason. And
we'll continue to stay away
that'll be
from
really
that
fun
on the main show.
That's right. So that's it for today. We appreciate you tuning in. We really do this for the love of the game, for the fun of it all. And every time that the Masters rolls around and I sit on my couch with my kids, even my wife and kids will watch the Masters. That's why I watch it. You know, they don't want to watch anything else with golf, but that one's super cool. And so we all sit together and make a big day of it. And it's just so special, man. It's so special. And it just gets you, like in Virginia, it just coincides with the beginning of the golf season every year. The grass is greening up and the flowers are blooming, and it's it's just a great time of year. So we're hoping that we can help you along this journey on your golf game as we go into the season 2026. And like I said, if you ever have any questions, please let us know. On our email is thegolfintervention@gmail.com, or find us on Substack or Instagram. And we appreciate you more than you know. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you have a great week of golf.